This is a left-leaning magazine interviewing a leftist guy, David Shore, on why Trump, read that headline again, folks, on why Trump was good for the GOP. The insights in the piece are stunning because everything you've been told about 2020 is wrong. Let me tell you first, you have to read the whole piece. It's quite long. It'll take you about 15 minutes. It's a good solid 2,000 words plus. It is worth your time. I sent it to my friend on the Trump campaign and said, if you don't read this today, I can't talk to you ever again. Didn't really say that, but that's what I was thinking. Everything you've been told about 2020 is wrong. To read it, go to bongino.com/newsletter. Subscribe to my newsletter. I'll email you stuff like this every morning. Let's get to premise number one. I believed myself that I've now totally thrown out the window because a liberal pollster going through the data has told me that this assertion is wrong. What is that assertion? It said, hey, Joe, you know, Trump got 75 million votes in the election, the most ever for a GOP candidate, because just GOP turnout was just really high. Makes sense, right? Guy, makes sense. Joe?
Yeah,
right?
man. Yeah.
All right. A lot of Republicans like Trump. He was popular and just a lot more Republicans turned out to vote for Trump. Wrong. You're wrong, Guy. Joe, you're wrong, too. You're both fired immediately.
Come on, dude.
Yes, sorry. It was a good run. Thank you for your time.
All right.
You're wrong. Totally. I was wrong, too. I'd have to fire myself. That's not what happened. What do you mean that's not what happened, Dan? The GOP did turn out to degrees they've never turned out before. Trump clearly, by a long shot, got the most votes ever for a GOP candidate running for president. Folks, it wasn't higher turnout. It was persuasion. Let that collagen settle into Jell-O for a minute. Let that mortar harden up. What? It wasn't higher GOP turnout. It was Trump digging into the Democrat base and persuading them for the first time to vote for Republicans. Ooh, that's the verdict is in. That may seem like a simple thing. Dan, that was obvious. No, it wasn't obvious. It wasn't obvious at all. Matter of fact, liberals, remember the narrative always matters, and the media have been very eager to tell you, Trump did well amongst Republicans. He did well, and he got the most votes, but he only did it because Republicans turned out. They are very eager to make the idea go away that maybe Trump was onto something and for the first time started to persuade lifelong Democrat voters that the GOP was a better option. That would be a very damaging narrative because it would lead to the narrative that Trump was not a negative force in this country, but maybe a positive one for getting people to open their eyes to other ideas. Oh my gosh, we can't have that out there. Let me read to you. If you're not seeing, by the way, how astonishing this is and the ramifications, it explains everything. I'm not doing a good enough job. That Trump was a positive force for the GOP can never get out there. They hated him so much. They want nothing but negativity attached to his name. And if Trump's powers of persuasion were so good that even Democrats started to vote for them, the media can't come out and say next, gosh, Democrats are just really stupid because they voted for Trump too. Do you understand how that's not a powerful that's not a great thing to say?
Mm-hmm.
Their whole line, Joe, am I making sense? Please tell me.
Seriously, yeah.
Their whole line has been, you Republicans are all racist Nazis, therefore you voted for the racist Nazi Trump. But what if that's not really the story? What if the story was that Trump actually persuaded a lot of the Democrats, the media have told us are good people, that he had the better ideas? No, but he's a racist and a Nazi. Wow, that would mean a lot of Democrats were racist and Nazis too. It also explains away cancel culture. I know, you're getting like, just get to the piece. I know, but there's so much juice in here. It explains cancel culture too. Why the rapid deterioration into cancel culture madness to wipe Trump off the face of the earth. Twitter, Facebook, Stripe, Salesforce, why? Because if his powers of persuasion were so powerful that he even convinced lifelong Democrats that he had the better ideas, then man, we better shut him down quick. What a danger. All right, without further ado, let's get to screenshot one. Read this whole piece. It's worth your time. I'll read this and then I'll explain it. They're talking about the idea that, hey, Trump just, he got those votes because, like I said, he just was high Republican turnout. Quote, but that looks wrong. It really seems like the electorate was slightly more Democratic than it had been in 2016. The exact opposite, folks, not more Republican, largely due to demographic change. Because there's such a large partisan gap between younger and older voters, every 4 years, the electorate gets something like 0.4% more Democratic just through generational churn. Younger people vote Democrat more, folks. As older people die, the electorate that shows up to vote becomes more Democrat. Simple as that. Back to the quote. So Trump didn't exceed expectations by inspiring higher than anticipated Republican turnout. Oh, here's the kicker. He exceeded them mostly through persuasion. A lot of voters changed their minds between 2016 and 2020. How can that be? They said he's a racist Nazi. How can that be? How can that be that between 2016 and 2020, a boatload of traditional Democrats changed their mind to vote for a guy the media swore is a Russian colluding, treasonous, racist Nazi? How is that? How is that? Folks, I have to tell you, I was fooled by that too. I thought it was his extremely high popularity amongst Republicans, which drove traditional Republican sit-outs. In other words, Joe, people who'd sit out elections, only vote every 10, 12, 16 years. Mm-hmm. I thought to myself, gosh, he just, he incentivized them because people loved him to show up and vote. No. That's not what happened. The electorate was actually more Democrat. So if the electorate was more Democrat and Trump got a record number of votes and it wasn't more Republicans voting for him, then who exactly was voting for the Trumpster? There's got to be some data. Now we have it. Henceforth, the piece. Now that the data about the election is starting to seep out there, exit polls, questions who you voted for, who you didn't, racial breakdowns, there are some fascinating conclusions right now. And bottom line up front, before I get to this next screenshot, the GOP is now becoming the party of the working man. Hold. William Wallace style. Hold with the spears. Part 2 of that, regardless of race. Black middle-class working families, Hispanic middle-class working families, Asian American working families are now starting to say, I'm not really about those defund the police, high tax, cancel Dr. Seuss Democrats. I'm not really digging that chili. I'm going to give this Trump guy a look-see. Now, the media, of course, absent this guy who is David Shor, who, again, is not a conservative. He's a liberal. This is a warning he's writing for the Democrats, where you as Republicans should finally put your chest out, shoulders back, and chin up high, and do what I told you at my CPAC speech. Be proud of the fact that we are on the right side of this, that freedom, economic liberty, they all matter. Public safety matters. These are our issues, not the left. And the working class is waking up, regardless of race. Listen to this. I'm going to read it. Quote, New York Mag. At the subgroup level, Democrats gained somewhere between 0.5% to 1% amongst non-college whites and roughly 7% amongst white college graduates, he writes in parentheses, which is kind of crazy. So Democrats are becoming the party of rich white liberals. Yet the Democrats' support among African Americans declined something like 1% to 2%. And then Hispanic support dropped by 8% to 9%. The jury's still out on Asian Americans. They're waiting on the data from California. But there's evidence that there was something like a 5% decline in Asian American support for Democrats, with a lot of variance among subgroups. There were really big declines in Vietnamese areas, for example. He says, anyway, one implication of these shifts is that the education polarization went up and racial polarization went down. Quote, here it is, the coup de grace. In other words, the voters' level of educational attainment, whether they had a college degree or not, became more predictive of which party they voted for in 2020 than in 2016, while a voter's racial identity became less predictive. Joe, have we not been saying this now for goosebumps? You're not wasting your time on my show? That identity politics, the Democrats' endless appeals to voters, say, vote for us because the Republicans are all racist. They hate you. What did I tell you? That identity politics and cancel culture will eventually cannibalize the left. Why? Because you can't constantly advocate for policies that pick preferential, that give preferential treatment to racial groups without harming other racial groups who start to say, that kind of sounds racist to me. You want to put meat on the bone? What do I mean by that? You can't advocate for eliminating charter schools, saying we need more racial equality. Charter schools are only for racist white Republicans, when it's actually Black and Hispanic families in a lot of struggling economically struggling districts that are benefiting from them. They feel like, gosh, that's really weird. A bunch of rich white liberals are telling me my kid can't go to a charter school. That sounds kind of racist. But the liberals' pitch is that, no, we're doing it because the Republicans are racist. And everybody's like, yeah, but my kid's school's being closed down, charter school, because of Democrats. That doesn't quite make sense. What about an even easier example? The specialty schools in New York City, Bronx Science and other ones, these elite schools? What about Asian minority families work really hard and they have to score 200 and 300 points higher on an entrance exam to get into a school, 200 or 300 points higher than white, Black, or Hispanic families because there's, air quotes here, too many Asians in those schools. Joe, that sounds kind of racist, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
does. Just checking.
Seriously, yeah.
It's a racist check for Democrats. We have to do that once in a while because the Democrats, no one checks them for their racism. Thank you, Joe. Joe agrees. That sounds kind of racist. There's an Asian quota? Kind of like they had the Jewish quota back in the... That sounds kind of racist and bigoted to me. And Asian voters are kind of like... hey, my kid can't get into a school because there's an Asian quota. I'm not really digging. I'm not really digging that. Working class parents with dirt under their fingernails, Asian, Hispanic, Black, minorities, even white working class voters, are saying this Democrat pitch about everything being racist all the time sounds kind of racist to me. Don't say I didn't warn you, Democrats. I'm sure audience archivist Judy could pull multiple clips where I've warned them repeatedly, their endless appeals to their voters, claiming everyone and their mother is a racist but them, while it's actually the Democrats pushing racist policies was inevitably going to backfire as people get hurt in their own homes. As the Hispanic trucker gets fired from his job, as Bill Maher said the other day, for flicking a booger, and someone says, no, that looked like a white supremacist sign. Remember that on the show the other day? The guy was Spanish. He works for a living. He's a white supremacist? Wow, that's weird. So takeaway number one, it wasn't higher turnout amongst Republicans that led to Trump's historic number of votes. It was his powers of persuasion. That makes him dangerous. Dangerous in the cancel culture eyes. Second, takeaway number two, the GOP is rapidly becoming the party of working class voters, regardless of your race. Finally.